Hey, welcome to another episode of Changed. My name's Brent Stone, and I'm super excited today because I have Leah Wolfe with me, and this is going to be so powerful. I had the opportunity to hear Leah recently share her testimony in front of our whole congregation at church, and it rocked everybody. And I'm not trying. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm, I'm not trying to I'm gonna let her toot her own horn here. Or toot Jesus's horn here. But I'm gonna let her go. But I'm super excited for everyone that's tuning in for this. Leah, thank you so much for being here and being willing to just share. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to you. And yeah, thanks
Mhm.
again.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. Um, I'm just very thrilled that all the platforms that the Lord has given me to share this, because it's a big deal. I feel like sharing your testimony has so much more power than I think we give it credit for. So I'm excited that He's able to use all of my bumps in the road.
Absolutely. It's awesome. Well, please take it away.
All right. So my biggest changing point, I guess, that the Lord really gave me. Well, I guess I should give you background first, huh?
Yeah, however you want to do it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, give people some background, and then
Okay.
you can go into that change. That's totally fine.
Okay. Um, well, I grew up pretty, I'd say like middle class, good life, family, brother, nice house, we were all good. And when I turned 9, my parents rocked my world by getting a divorce. And yeah, I didn't cope very well. I did not really know coping skills, I guess. That was not something that my parents had equipped me with. So they had shielded me from a lot of the things that were going on. So I really didn't know what was going on until it happened. So that turned into what kind of started as a food addiction, and then it led to acting out. My grades fell from A's to F's in one year, and I started cutting myself not long after that. And before long it was stealing liquor from the liquor cabinet, and diving in a little bit farther each time something quit working. So I eventually was, you know, finding whatever I could find. And at that point, with my relationship with God, I had grown up in the church. My mom had taken me my whole life. And I started to become very angry with the Lord, just because of all the things. It's like, why are you doing this to me? Sunday school always taught me all this. God is good, God loves you, and all these things. And I'm like, well, this doesn't feel like love, like. So I was already on the fence and questioning things, still coping inappropriately. And a friend of mine, she was 19 and she died in a car accident. And she was a big part of our youth group, and she babysat me. She was such an awesome person. And I was so angry that I actually renounced my relationship with God. And I actually told people that He wasn't real. He wouldn't do this. He wouldn't take these good people away. And, yeah, my mom was not very happy with me. So at that point, I had really started to, drift away. I was very confrontational, especially with my poor mother. And so I was just pretty much coming unglued at this point. Um, and so because of that, I really wanted to gain some independence away from my parents, because I was in like full rebellion at this point. And I got a job when I was 14 and started supporting myself and supporting my habits. And multiple times in school, I almost got in trouble for drugs, but somehow managed to escape it. But so I kept, progressively getting worse. Got into a really, really bad abusive relationship for about 6 years. When I was 14, we started dating and did a lot of dumb things. We both dove down the addiction hole, together, and everything became very abusive at one point, physically, mentally, spiritually, and sexually abusive. And so that was awful. That really took me down an even darker path with my addiction. I had actually gotten to the point where I was starting to practice magic and witchcraft. I was practicing a Wiccan religion, and some of it not so bright. And so I was grasping at strings, really, now that I look back at things, and, trying to manipulate the world around me because I felt powerless. And so
Yeah.
that was, yeah, that was a huge point in my life where I had so much built up emotions, once we had finally broken up, that I went off the rails, and I just wanted to, get high. I wanted to escape my life, escape all of the pain and everything that had built up in my life. And so I pursued life as a drug dealer. Sounds kind of stupid now, but like, that was where I wanted to go. And so I actually had a vocational degree in criminal justice, so I knew exactly where all this was going to go, but did it anyway. Um, but yeah, I started dealing drugs on a fairly decent scale, and I ran around. I was homeless for a long time in the beginning. My family had completely disowned me at one point. One thing I will say, my mother never gave up on me. She was my prayer warrior my whole life,
It's
and
awesome.
she still is. And
And
I don't think I would be where I am today without the prayers that she did. And she had people in England and Scotland and Australia. She had everybody around the world praying for me. And now as a mother, I like it's so powerful,
yeah.
to know, that you have somebody in your corner. Although I didn't really appreciate it then. Oh, but yeah, so all of that led to eventually, me getting in trouble. I went to prison for 2 years for all of that, and came home. Things were, yeah, they were okay. I did have a lot of life-changing experiences, though, while in there for those 2 years. When you're stripped of everything in the world, even the clothes on your back, life takes a different toll. It takes a different outlook, like these things are not important. You can survive without them. But the one thing they do allow you to have is the Bible. And so I had this Bible, and I set it on my shelf, and I didn't look at it. I was like, whatever, I know about this, and it's all lies, it's in my head. And in Rockingham, there is a way to actually clean out your toilet and talk to the men upstairs. And I was like, oh well, I'm bored, have anything to do. So I decided to start talking to somebody.
So,
And
like, can I just pause for a second? So,
yeah,
how do you figure this out?
so I didn't figure it out. So it's been known for a long time, and I'm not
Like
really
people
sure
talking
who.
between cells?
Yes, like no,
Okay.
like above. Like the men
Okay.
are
Okay.
above the women. And
Okay.
so I guess the plumbing pipes ran down, and so if you cleaned the water out of the toilet, you could actually hear. Like we would make little funnels out of our manuals and our books, and so we could hear and we could talk and not like actually, stick your head all
Right.
that. But
Wow. How amazing is that?
it cracks me up. And I think it's so funny. Like, God's got a sense of humor because, he's like, listen, I can reach you through a toilet. Like, it's like, come on. But,
Amazing.
yeah, this guy and me started talking, and, we're getting to know each other, asking each other questions, typical, what are you in here for? How long do you have? Blah, blah, blah. And then he starts asking me about, do I read the Bible? And, I started on my typical, no, I do not, and I don't want anything to do with it, like he's not real. This is all just baloney, pretty much. So he kept on me and kept on me, and finally he was like, listen, do me a favor. I want to challenge you to read one thing in the Word. So if you don't want to read anymore after that, I will drop it and leave it alone. I won't talk about it anymore. And I was like, okay. So he
Seems
challenged
fair,
me.
like a fair challenge.
Yeah, he was good at that. But he told me to read the book of James. And I just remember sitting in my cell that night, and I remembered where James was in the Bible from, Sunday school and things like that. And I opened it up and I started reading it. And I remember, and this is still a verse that sticks out to me, as one of the first things that really spoke to me was to rejoice in your trials and tribulations, and that, it is an endurance of your faith and it can grow your faith. And I just remember being like, you want me to rejoice in all of the stuff I have been through? Like, I started getting in my feelings. I was like, this is ridiculous, like, how dare you? I said, obviously it didn't endure my faith, I'm getting my attitude. And but I kept going. And the farther I kept going, the more like he talked about so many of the things that he knew we were going to encounter in this life. And, the power that we can hold to do pretty much good or evil, and just how powerful the tongue can be. And just, I remember, talking about how powerful the tongue is and how, you can steer a horse from a bit in its mouth. And I was just like, this is everything that I have encountered in my life. And, he told us that these things were going to happen. At this point, I mean, now that I look back on it, kind of makes me a little salty with my Sunday school teacher. They didn't come to me with all this stuff, like I'm like, okay, so maybe I didn't have the full story, So I became interested in trying to learn more. I became a lot more open-minded of, what things were. And before long, me and this guy in the toilet started doing Bible studies together. We would write to outside ministries and get the same Bible studies sent to us, and we would do them through the toilet and talk about them. And
So good.
it was really cool. We got into our relationship pretty far, and I remember at one point when I got shipped down the road to prison, I remember the Lord kind of spoke to me for the first time and told me that his season in my life was over, that he did what he was supposed to do.
This
And
guy.
yes,
Got
and
it.
because
Okay.
we had developed a relationship from this. And
Sure.
so at this point I was like, okay, I had to make this hard decision, but I was like, really, in what position are either one of us in to be in a relationship? Like, so eventually, God was like, okay, like this is what he was put in your life for. And so we ended up, ending that. And I continued doing studies and things with a lot of the women in the prisons. In prison, you really don't have as much at the beginning. You're shipped there with pretty much nothing. I was shipped 2 hours, I think it was almost 3 hours away in a paper jumpsuit and, chains and handcuffs. And so they take everything from you yet again, and you have to start all over. So I did still have my Bible. And so that's what we did, is we would just go through the word and just talk about it. What does it mean to you? And I just remember like hearing, some of the different perspectives from other people and just growing so much from them. And in prison, while I was there, I started a spiritual journal. And in it, I had written that I wanted to start a recovery home for women. And
So,
so I had started all these things that I felt like I was supposed to do. And so that was a big point of growth for me. When I came home, my parents they still didn't trust me. I had done a lot to our relationship, lied. I had stolen from them at one point in my addiction. And they were still pretty angry with me about that. I wasn't even allowed to have a key to my house for a long time. I wasn't allowed to be there without anybody there. And now that I look back on that, my pride, I guess you could say, got in the way of helping heal that. And I started rebelling again, being angry with them. And, another thing I look back on is, even though I developed that relationship, I didn't find any healing while I was in prison. I was just, going through and learning. I wasn't working on myself in my own spirit. But it
Yeah.
started my journey. Yeah, it wasn't long after being released, I ended up turning back to that life. And that was quite the journey. But I do believe that without God on my side during that time, I don't believe I would have made it out that time.
Yeah.
I experienced a lot of it. The easiest way for me to explain it is a lot of very evil and just demonic things. And, now that I look back, I truly believe in my heart that the enemy was pissed that he lost one of his soldiers and that God had gained one. And he
Yeah.
was trying to take care of that. And that's the
So
only,
good.
yeah, it is the only way I can explain it. I mean, I could tell you stories and like some people just don't believe me. Like it's crazy stuff that I experienced during those couple years. And I finally escaped from that situation, and I was trying to rebuild my mental health at that point. And I just remember there were certain things that happened during that time. I will tell you one turning point that really gave me enough courage to leave that situation, and it was a relationship that had surrounded me with a lot of those things. And we actually were homeless, and we were hanging out with one of his friends, and we didn't have anywhere to stay. Our phones were dead. We had to have some place to charge them. So he was like, well, let's stop at my mom's house. It's right over here. So we go in, and I had been so uptight all day, just very nervous. That's how I lived for years. And when we walked in, I just felt this overwhelming calm and peace. And I sat on her couch, and she had a Jesus calling book right next to a Bible. And I waited until they left the room, and I picked up the Jesus calling book. Well, I asked her first, and she told me yes. And so I started reading it, and I could tell that she was deaf, just by how she was speaking. And I thanked her and read it, and I don't even remember what it said, but I remember mine and hers conversation. And she had told me that, she said, what's your situation? Like, how are you here? We started talking, and she said, I wasn't always deaf. She said, but when I lost my hearing, I kept going to the Lord and asking him to heal my ears. And instead he gave her a better gift. He gave her, I was in danger, and that don't forget that the Lord is beside me and he is fighting with me, and that he's going to help me out of this. But don't forget that he's with you. Like, 'cause I was feeling so abandoned again, and just, this can't be what life is. And I remember when I left there, I had like this empowerment about myself, and I was like, I'm determined, I'm gonna get out of this. And like, I
Yeah.
finally did, and it was really hard, but he carried me through it. And once again, still not dealing with the healing part of my life. Um, I ended up getting in trouble again, and I went back in for a year. And it was during that time I found out I was pregnant about a month and a half after I had been in jail. And I was just totally blown away. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, is this a joke? Like, I didn't even know how much time I was going to get at that point. But, most people in their first probation violation, they can get 3, 6 months, it's all good. So I was like, okay, this isn't so bad. And then I go to court and they told me I got a year. And I mean, I fell to pieces. I was like, that means I'm going to have her while I'm in jail. Like, this is not what I pictured for my life. Like, what are you doing? And, I was so angry. And, when I got to this point, like, there were some habits from my Wiccan days that I hadn't fully let go of. And
Sure.
I finally got to a point where I just completely surrendered while I was in that jail. Same pod and everything. I was back there again. And I was like, you know what? Like, I can't do this. I can't. Like, this is too much. Like, you have maxed me out. I am done. Like, I told him, this is beyond what I can handle. And I need you to walk me through this. I need you to pick me up and carry me and, give me a bottle. Like, I'm like, treat me like a baby because I can't do this. And so,
Yeah.
I remember I started a journal and I would sit in my cell by myself and just talk to him and tell him, like, this is what I want for my child. Like, I can't do anything in here. I'm helpless. I can't prepare for this baby. I can't be a part of any baby shower. I can't be a part of anything, getting the room ready, picking out clothes. All of these things were weighing on me so much. And the Lord finally told me, like, this is not what's important. What is important is praying over your child, getting rid of attacking these generational curses that have been in your and her dad's family, and
Yeah.
start plowing through the spiritual warfare because it's real.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like, bam, okay, like, this is what I can do. And then I felt like I was actually doing something for her. And back then, this is when Grace Covenant Church had the prison ministry where they had the women coming to the doors and praying.
Yeah.
They impacted me so much. I would look forward to every Saturday they would come. I would sit and I would wait for them to come, and I would be the first one up there. And I remember them giving me, jobs like, write these things down, and when we come back next time, we're going to pray into them, and you can continue to do it on your own, but let's do it together too. And
Yeah.
that meant so much to me. And, I have to add that today, me and some of those women are very good friends. And so they have helped
Yeah.
me so much. And, that was a huge turning point for me to actually feel useful and to have those people from, our church that also could help my mom, out there who was going to take my daughter after I had her. So yeah, that's a little bit of a background as far as that point, because I got out after I had her. She was 3 months old when I came out, and my parents were. It's like God was working on them, because they were like, "All right, let's fresh, clean slate. Let's start over." And I was like, "Yeah,"
Wow.
I was like, that'd be
Wow.
great." So
Wow.
yeah,
God's so
so
good.
yes, he is. So they, took my daughter and welcomed me into their home when I came home. And I remember just having this drive like I had never felt before. I was like, okay, let's do this. I mean, I just felt so empowered when I got out, because I knew that the Lord carried me through those 3 months. Like, I was a disaster, but it was like he almost cut off those bad emotions for me and helped me push through. He gave me a hysterical roommate that I needed desperately. And, he put things in place that I needed. It didn't mean the enemy didn't try to send some other things my way, but he carried me beyond what I thought was possible. And so, coming home, I had been also sentenced to do what was 90-day reporting at Gemeinschaft Women's Home. They now have a residential part, but this is before they had residential. So I went through that and really started to find that I had such joy in watching, these women walk through their lives. And, I had this determination. I was like, this is no longer an option. My past is not an option. Like, it cannot happen. I kept looking at my daughter, and I remembered that pain that I had felt for those 3 months. And I use that to drive me forward every day. And I began to share some of those things with some of those ladies, and just watching how, they saw that the pain that I used to let rule my life and send me down a dark hole was now pushing me forward. And so, I started encouraging them to do the same thing. Like, this pain is just going to keep coming if you keep putting yourself in these situations. Instead, use that is to remember that, to move forward. And, that's how it kind of started there. I ended up staying at Gemeinschaft. I was only sentenced to 90 days, but I stayed on as a actual participant for about a year. And then they were like, you don't need this. Like, they were like, like, why do you want to keep doing this? And I was like, this is helping me. Like, it's pushing me forward. And so I ended up signing intern papers and stayed with them for another year. And so I was part of the recovery team, and my daughter was also part of it. They let me bring her with me, and they were awesome. So I just remember at one point I was at Grace Covenant. I was like, why don't we have like a recovery group? Like, what's going on with that? And so I started
Yeah.
meeting with Pastor Mike Sauter, and I just asked him, what's going on with this? And he's like, we have been looking for somebody to do something like that. Like, that would be really cool. And I'm like, let's do this. Like, I'm down. And many meetings, and them really putting trust into me to take care of this. And that was a new thing for me, is somebody that barely knew me just to give me trust, and with something so big. Like, I was like, really? you know I passed my 1 year sobriety date on the 7th of September 2019. Well, that was my year release. So technically, 2 years sober, but, a year out. So I have a
Yeah.
hard time with that sometimes, because it was an option when I was out. But,
Right.
yeah, but, yeah, so then it was September 11th of 2019. We started New Life Recovery at Grace Covenant Church. And I had some co-leaders, and my parents were coaching me. And I remember we only had 2 people show up, which that was fine. I was a disaster. I was a nervous mess. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going with the flow. How about we just get to know each other this meeting? So that was like a big part of God growing me and healing me. Now that I look back, like, it's not always, this cookie cutter, like you go to an inner healing meeting or a counselor, and you're good. It's all these different pieces that he puts in front, pieced together.
Yeah.
And so he kept putting all of these things in my path, and slowly but surely he has like cracked open all these different spots in my life, and I've found so much healing in my life through New Life Recovery, through, I have been to counselors, I have been to doctors, I've been to all of these things, and finally I'm free from so much. And he just keeps growing New Life Recovery, which has been awesome. One of those 2 people that came on the first night that year still comes regularly every Thursday. And he has been absolutely awesome to walk with life through. And we just went to his birthday party yesterday, actually. So it's been really cool just to get to know these people and help them with their walk and just be a resource, when somebody needs to grow or somebody just needs a friend, like whatever that is. I really felt like the Lord told me that this group was supposed to be based on community, not on 12 steps, not on, a set curriculum so I felt like it is supposed to be based to come together as a group of people with the same goal and to grow in community with him. And so we do a lot of Bible studies.
Yeah.
Everything that I do is based off of the word. And that's been a growth point for me too, because every week I'm forced to get in that word. So it has been so awesome all the way around. And I've really been feeling like the Lord's telling me that this house that I have been wanting to do since I was sitting on my bunk in prison is going to happen. He is forming it. He has started things. I have my first mission support team on the 20th of October. And so we're pushing. We're trying to get stuff rolling. And I'm like, I find so much passion in this. And I know that the Lord has so much that he is turning for his good. Romans 8:28 is something that I just look back and he works all things for the good for those that love him, and he is working all of my mess into his masterpiece, and it is so much fun.
That's so awesome. That's that's so good. It's awesome. I'm not stopping you. Keep
Okay,
going.
okay,
I'm just commenting.
okay. Um, just kind of briefly too, like, my daughter's 5 years old now, and she is awesome. She is such a joy. And, I just had a parent teacher conference with her teacher recently. And, another little background God moment. When I had her dedicated when she was a child, I had the worship leader at Grace prophesied over her that she was going to be a peacemaker. And, that's the only thing that really stuck to my brain that day. And she has been beyond a peacemaker in her life. Like, she is at school comforting the kids that are uncomfortable, comforting those that are hurt and having a hard time. Even the ones that aren't nice to her, she is still nice to them. Like, she is so sweet. And she's just a blessing in so many ways. And I'm just so grateful that, she has grown to be who she is. Her father is not present in her life. He is still battling with those addictions. And so it has been quite the journey with, my parents. Once again, they have been my lifesavers and they have helped me raise my child. And, now I'm engaged. And so we are hoping to start that life here in the next year or so. And so that's been an awesome journey. And I feel like, God has given me somebody who also has a passion to help people. And he is much farther in the process, but he is trying to also open a men's recovery home. And so he's been working towards that for a couple years. And so I'm really hoping, God's going to give us the clarity on how our ministries merge together here in the future. But yeah, it's been such an awesome journey to just see the blessings that God will give you if you just make that choice to be like, okay, yes, I will do this. It's like starting that group. I had no idea what I was doing, but you know what? I'm here and just use me. I don't know. But it's been awesome. And, now I have participants that lead groups that have taken up the torch to help with things. Because for the last few years, I have been leading this group by myself since COVID. And at first it seemed overwhelming. But now it's like, God's like, you got this. Like, I'm going to provide what needs to be provided. And he has. And we feed everybody every night. We've recently taken up donations from a local store. that has been helping us. We've had people donate meals like once a week out of the month. And I mean, he has provided so much to help with this. And that just tells me that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and that he is going to continue providing. We've been growing a lot here lately. And there is a website, if you'd like me to
Yeah.
throw that
Well,
out there.
yeah, you can say it now, and then
Okay.
also we'll put it in the show notes too, so people can go
Okay.
and click on a link. Yeah, but yeah, please go ahead and share it.
Okay. Yeah. It's www.newliferecoverygcc.com.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. Leah, this is so good. Is there anything else you want to share, or any like bit of encouragement you want to share with people watching and listening before we cut out of here?
Yeah. So first time I ever shared my testimony was in a rehab that I went to, and they asked me to come up with the biggest takeaway of my life. And I remember my biggest takeaway was choices. Like all of our little choices in life that seems insignificant or, whatever, all the way down to your thought process have such a significant impact in our lives. Just I remember before I would relapse, I would think about, start thinking in this pattern. And they teach us that in recovery, but when you're in that mode, it's like, yeah, whatever, these don't mean anything. It's a stupid class I have to take, like it's like you get stuck in this mentality. But in reality, every single choice we make, I mean, down to the simple things that our bodies do involuntarily is a choice to live or a choice to go down the other road. And
It's
you
true.
know it's it's so important to think about these things. And we can't change our whole lives and our whole choice patterns by ourselves. Finding a community of people, even if that's not New Life Recovery, finding a Christian group of people to help with that walk is huge. And so that is one thing that I definitely always like to share. And the other thing is to never lose hope. It has been such a journey. I remember my mom had this big thing with the word hope there at the end of my addiction, and she didn't know why. It was just extremely important to her for some reason. And I told her recently, we had a big cry about it and everything, like that is what gave me hope, is that she hadn't lost hope in me, and she hadn't lost hope that the Lord could save me. And I just remember it being almost like rooted into me because it was at a point in my life where I had lost hope. I actually had a suicide attempt right before this happened, and I was unsuccessful. And clearly, so now I look at, it was right after that the Lord put that word on her heart, and it then transferred to me. So, whether you're in addiction or you have somebody else in addiction, don't lose hope, because it's contagious and it can affect what that person feels. So, yeah,
It's
that's my
awesome.
biggest things.
This is so good. Thank you so much. This is
You're welcome.
this is gonna help a lot of people. And
Yay.
I'm so thankful for you just being willing to come on here and just share. This is so good.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we are wrapping up this episode of Changed, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone again here real soon. Thanks, Leah, for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you.